everyone. Welcome to This Week on Film Week. Today we will be discussing NBC Universal's Fandango, Fandango's like their subsidiary making the purchase of Vudu from Walmart official, and David Lynch addressing Netflix show rumors and shares candid thoughts on the new Dune film since he directed the original adaptation. And also our film club discussion for the week.
We lost them all.
We lost
I'm
him.
your Samuel Teyssier.
I'm your host, Michael Doerge, and this is Film Day.
I'm Jackson Guido. We lost Sam a little bit. He was just about to say the title of our.
Yeah, my bad.
No worries. That was pretty funny. But yeah.
Because I had the stream in the background, so I was listening to myself, and I got thrown off. So, anyway, guys, we're back on track. Yeah, like I said, I'm your host Samuel Teyssier, joined by Michael Doerge and Jackson Guido. How's your week, guys? I'm sorry about that weird intro, but
that's all right.
That's how it goes. And congratulations to everyone, because we're gonna have nice audio this week, hopefully, because Doerge has headphones, something
taped it
that
up.
will sound very nice.
So
to all you podcast listeners, we have you.
Yes, sir. I've taped my mic to my face, so it's not uncomfortable at all. But I guess I'll start. I probably had the most boring week. I got a second job selling face shields to places that need it for COVID. Like on the phone, I've been calling hospitals and prisons and dental offices all across the United States. Literally, like.
So that's the thing that they put in front of like the cash register?
No, it's so if you see like those pictures of nurses talking about how they're so like undersupplied, it's basically it's that plastic like face guard visor basically.
Yeah.
It's basically just like it makes the masks last longer because anything coming at it will hit the mask first. I'm not going to sell it to you because I've been doing that all week. But, yeah, so I'm doing my part, taking care of the problem. But I've been literally every second that I'm not in school or doing schoolwork or editing my senior project, which I really haven't been able to do much of. I've been working, so I didn't get to see the movie this week, unfortunately. I'm sure it was good.
Hey, no worries. Yeah, we'll talk about it. And you'll definitely be able to help us somebody. I have an idea of how to bring you into the conversation. No problem.
I did catch the latest episode of the Clone Wars, which was really badass. So.
Oh yeah.
That was about it.
Yeah, I wanted to watch that, but I'm just waiting till all four release because I don't know. I just like binging all four of them all together because it seems like one complete arc, and I saw all of them, all the previous ones, but I'm just waiting for the next ones. But how was your week, Jackson? You look like you have a new setup in your background.
Yeah. Well, I have some family staying over and they're in the main room, so I wanted to kind of definitely against COVID procedure, but definitely keeping our hands washed and keeping our distance while they're here. But I elected to go into my room just to make sure the audio quality remains crisp as ever. But because we're all about production quality here at Film Week, but Turkey has the tape, all about production quality. I didn't get to see anything else besides our Film Week movie, but I did see that a new episode of Tiger King was just put on Netflix within the last day, and I wasn't sure, but sure enough, there's like an extra bonus episode that has Joel McHale. He's interviewing some of the people who are in it and kind of gauging their reaction to the documentary and its impact so far. So
Joel McHale is in like the lead in Community.
Yeah, it's a little odd because I don't really know what connection he has to the project, but I'll definitely be checking that one out this week. So we'll see, because I'm always fascinated by such a high profile documentary, how it's going to be how the people reacting are going to be. I mean, obviously Joe Exotic always wanted to be a celebrity, but the other people, they are now thrust into, celebrity for a day status, especially with this quarantine going on and everyone watching the same documentary series. So I'm really excited to see that. What about you, Sam? Good week overall?
Yeah, good week. Yeah, working every day, doing my grocery store delivery service, and working at a grocery store as well. So it's a fun time. Always at a grocery store every day. Really, violating that quarantine procedure, but
You're an essential worker.
Yeah, definitely. But that's what we saw this week, guys. Along with Killing Them Softly. We're going to start right off with Killing Them Softly, and Jackson's going to lead the conversation since it's his film that he picked, and we're all going to discuss it and join in with us, and whatever you think, let us know. Following that, we're just going to talk some film news. We only have 3 big topics this week, and then we have 1 trailer we're going to talk about. So it should be a quick, concise show, and a really boiled down to the essentials one. So, Jackson, you want to start with that? Discussion?
Sure. I have one quick question.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Is this one of those movies that, like, I'm not gonna make us do a spoiler thing, but is this one of those movies that, like, there's a big, like, twist that, like, spoiling would be bad, or is it, like, not that twist heavy?
That's a good question. Well, there certainly is things at the end. I would say there is a pretty big spoiler in it, but I think we can. If we end up saying it,
I mean, don't avoid it for me. I was just asking. You feel like the movie would be ruined for me if I knew because I'm putting it on in the background while we're talking.
So the interesting thing about this movie, and I, just to reiterate for people who might not have seen last week's show, the reason that I chose this film was because it seemed like it had a lot going for it. It was a Plan B production. It's starring Brad Pitt.
Scene right off the bat. I know that's TWC.
Yeah. And it had a lot of great talent behind it. It has a lot of. It looked like a really gritty piece, an interesting, like action, dark film. And I, now that it's about 8 years old, I think it came out in 2012. I was wondering why it was a film that was forgotten, at least from my perspective. It's something that I don't hear talked about when, great 2010s, crime or, gang movies are brought up. And I kind of wanted to see if it was rightfully forgotten or if it was something that, kind of contained a little bit of a gem inside. But Sam, I kind of want to gauge your perspective here because, and Doerge mentioned spoilers and the like, but really the entire gist of this movie is summed up in the synopsis. It's 2 guys who don't really know what they're doing, rob a underground card game run by a bunch of mob bosses, and they're hunted down by a hitman that is hired by the mob bosses after they get their money stolen. I mean, at its core, that's basically the film, right?
Yeah. Just like I didn't expect James Gandolfini to have that much of a major role in this film because I just haven't seen him in too much, because he hasn't been around since he passed, but I haven't seen him in really anything film-wise. I just know he's in The Sopranos, so it was refreshing to see him in this. And honestly, this cast is filled with a bunch of big names. Just Brad Pitt, Richard Jenkins, James Gandolfini, Ray Liotta. Like the list goes on, and it's just a great cast with and just the beginning of the film really threw me off though. Just like with how it's set up, I expected a more Brad Pitt focused. Just the way the trailer was set up and how I was previewed it, I was just a more just not basic, but just one that was more like other films. It was very it introduced the other characters like one by one in the beginning, and it was slower compared to the second half of the film, which really was more action heavy and had the darker tones that finished the film, which I really that's what I was looking forward to the whole film, because to me it was marketed as like a neo noir crime film, but we really got that in the second half,
Mhm.
and that's what I liked about it. And like you said, it's about a card game that kind of goes wrong, and it's based off a book which I didn't know about before, and I read about how they had adapted the film by the writer director, and it's an interesting process how they modernized it in a way, and you see all the undertones with the political climate during the film, during the setting of the film, because there's a lot of talk about like Bush and Obama, like when the film took place. So that that was a cool undertone that I saw throughout the film. I don't
Yeah,
know what other ones you saw.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure all of us would agree that looking at the marketing for this film, looking for, just looking up Killing Them Softly and Googling it and seeing the poster and everything, nothing screams Barack Obama or political undertone, right? Like it just seems like
Yeah,
it's a story that's removed from the wider world around it, but I guess it's not, and it's definitely an odd thing because throughout the film there's this, and clearly they continuously reference the 2008 financial crisis, which was covered in part in The Big Short and other films that came out around the early 2010s. But yeah, it has this really arching political undertone about people and workers and what it means to be American, and Brad Pitt believes that everybody, America is every man for himself, and Barack Obama, who is credited
yeah,
as Senator Obama at one point because it was in the midst of the presidential race, is you know the the surrounding narrative is that we are all one nation, we are all one people, and then I guess the point of the story is to kind of undermine that by saying that everybody is truly alone, no matter who you are, and that comes through in a way.
yeah,
I definitely have,
yeah. We see that in the final line of the film too.
yeah.
That's what I really like, the final line by Brad Pitt's character, and that really stuck with me. That's one of the best like final lines I've seen in a while. That
It
just
was
ended
it
a
was
film like
definitely
that.
great.
That really summed up his thoughts about Obama and the whole entire uh, his feelings about America itself in this point in time.
What is this? The 2008 political podcast? Come on, guys.
It seems the film is
Senator Obama.
a lot more than I
Why,
expected.
It seems so odd, man, because it's so far removed from where we are now politically. I mean, we are completely past the Obama era, and this was made referencing the beginning of the Obama era.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, but I mean, the film does a lot of things well. I think that the overall tone, the cinematography and the execution, those things are all there and they're interesting. And, obviously the aesthetic is pretty muddy, but I think it fits the subject material and it doesn't make it less interesting. I think that my biggest issue with the film was probably with the pacing and the script. I think the script is good and it's based on this book and it's done well, but I think that they had a lot of ideas and they had these characters that maybe got more screen time than they needed to. It's an interesting one because this is it's a 70-minute movie. It's pretty short overall. It's over pretty quick, and they spend a lot of time with James Gandolfini's character and digging into his. He used to be this great gangster, and that's Brad Pitt admires him, and that's why he calls him initially. But then he, over the course of the days they spend together, he realizes that he's kind of a shell of his former self. That is a really long-winded way to get to the third act, which doesn't involve
Yeah,
James Gandolfini at all, right? I mean, what do you feel about that, Sam?
yeah. That's one of my issues as well, because just I expected more of it like a drive kind of film in that
Right.
way. But it's not really anything like that. Like the first half of the film is really just setting up a lot about James Gandolfini's character, and like you said, we don't see him at all after that. So that really threw me off going into the film or after watching the film. But for what I got from the film, I enjoyed it. The writing, it was like very strategic in how they set up that element of James Gandolfini's character just to not be there. But I still felt his presence even when he wasn't there in whenever Brad Pitt was on screen. So I enjoyed that. And even, I think how Brad Pitt came to terms in the final statement that he said, I think without James Gandolfini's character, I don't think that was possible, because I think his moments spent with him, seeing that this man isn't the way he was, like how he expected, like how he was a shell of his former self. I think that kind of cemented his view, like how it was in the final act. And that's what I enjoyed, that seeing them, really seeing them on screen together. I like their chemistry as well, James Gandolfini and Pitt.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously fantastic. I think his performance is great as this, like, he talks a big talk, and he's but clearly when he's challenged on his effectiveness and how good he really is, you kind of see how small he is, and how much his life has like he's not what he used to be, or at least what he is in Brad Pitt's character's eyes, who I think is named Jackie, if I remember correctly. America's a business pay up. Yep. Great line. Great line. But another thing I wanted to mention, this movie only cost $15 million. It's it's pretty cheap overall. And you can see that, it is well executed, but definitely there's not a lot of bullets flying. It's the implication that bullets might fly that pervades throughout this whole film. Except for, and this is a mild spoiler, so if you do want to go and see it, maybe mute me for about the next 10 seconds, but the scene where they shoot Ray Liotta's character in the drive-by looks shockingly expensive for something that I think feels a little out of place. It's sort of this, and Doerge, you could probably imagine this. It's very similar to if you saw Batman v Superman, the very beginning scene where Bruce Wayne's parents are killed, and it's done in this very slow-mo style, Zack Snyder, basically. It feels, yeah, and like you see the barrel of the gun cock and the smoke go out, and it's very much like that.
It feels out of place to me, at least.
It feels out of place, and it's this very beautiful, like there's this symphonic, opera going on around him, and it's just, it works for what it is on its own, but in the context of the film, the idea that Brad Pitt, and then the whole reason it's called this is because of this line in the book that made its way into the movie, that Brad Pitt says he doesn't like killing people face to face because it gets emotional and they get touchy-feely, and he doesn't want to deal with all that. He likes killing them softly. He likes doing it from a distance where they don't even know what happened, almost like it's mercy.
He doesn't want to be personal about it.
Yeah, but for them to do this elaborate, beautiful, artsy death scene kind of just goes against the whole killing them softly ideal. You know what I mean? It kind of felt like that's not how if Brad Pitt's character was directing that scene, he would never have let that be. He would want it to be much more minimalist and less dramatic, I'm sure.
It kind of seems like that was a fad of the day, and we don't see that too much anymore, at least with that type of film, especially with a $15 million Plan B entertainment project. I don't think we would see that today. But with your overblown action film, you would. But what are you going to say?
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I think you'd see a tendency more nowadays for a small budget film like this, or an artsier kind of crime movie, to really pull back. And that's really like a big trend right now, is seeing like how little you can actually show to like express stuff. Like if you like You Were Never Really Here is a movie that makes me think of it, where it was a low budget like crime sort of movie with a lot of violence in it, but it's like all like wide shot or like off camera violence, and that's maybe part of like what you said, like it was kind of a fad at the time, was to have these kind of really dramatic crime things, whereas today it's more like minimalist and pull it back till like you can barely see how far you can stretch it before people are like, what's happening?
Yeah, it feels very Zack Snyder in a movie that really doesn't give that kind of aesthetic otherwise.
Yeah, I agree. And that's really the only time we see that kind of action like that, though, in the film. And that's why,
Yeah.
to me at least, felt out of place, and the just really overblown sense of it.
Yeah, certainly. So, I mean, Sam, what's your overall take from this film? I mean, how do you feel in a macro sense, and do you think that this is a film that now or later on we might look back on for a particular shot or a particular line, or for the merits that it has, or is it something that might just fall into its time and genre and just kind of be a piece of history, but not something that we necessarily look back on as a piece of relevant film history?
Yeah, I think that already has been decided because, like you said before we even started talking, this is kind of a hidden gem. It's hidden, like no one talks about it even today. So I think this is going to stay hidden just because it seems like a film of the time, just
Mhm.
like that, as many like political references as it makes, and like those conversations will continue, but just not in not that context, and just also like we said, at least to me, some of the biggest uh, necessities in film are like correct pacing and themes, and like pacing, like at least in the first half of the film, for me, it was a bit off, a bit too slow, like getting to know Brad Pitt's character, and that's the character we want to follow, and we want to like view his perspective in throughout the film, and we don't really see that until a while throughout the film. And then but something that will stay with me is just the end of the film, just how he delivers that last line. I'll look it up really quick. It was a really, really cool one. Uh, it's this guy wants to tell me we're living in a community. Don't make me laugh. I'm living in America, and in America, you're on your own. America is not a country; it's a business. Now, effing pay me. I'm not gonna say. I don't know if YouTube is that
Now
restrictive,
freaking
but
pay me.
freaking pay me. But yeah, I really like that final line, and just I really admire how it was adapted from a like 1976 novel, and how they made it relevant today in the time that it was released. And I'm it kind of sucks that I didn't even know this film was released when it was released, and I wasn't really too heavy on films when it was, but I it kind of sucks. Yeah, it didn't really make too big of a hit at the box office. It only made like 35 million, I think. And yeah, that's good for how much it cost. But for as many big names that are in it, I expected a bit more. But
I'm sure they
what
did
do you
too.
think, Jackson?
I think that Killing Them Softly is going to be a film that is propped up mainly by the people who were in it. I think that the reason we're talking about it at all is because of Brad Pitt's involvement, and his legacy will continue for a century or longer. He will be remembered, and his filmography will be looked back on. But either particular will be one that stands on its own merit, or if it exists as an interesting, like, trivial pursuit fact that Brad Pitt starred in this movie this one time. But I think overall it executes some things well, and it's an interesting film for its time. My prediction, which is a little bold, is I think this film will age like wine. Right now, certainly nothing too special. I think it's a great film on its own, but it's a little disjointed in some areas. But there are a lot of older films that we look back on as some of the greatest of all time, or some that um, are remembered, for one reason or another, that have significant flaws, but we remember them for their aesthetic, or for a particular line, or a particular scene that stuck with people. I think that because this film is so ingrained in its time period, it will be something that, maybe a college watches when they are learning about the 2008 financial crisis and how it impacted people, or maybe something that people look back on when they think of the 2000s as a quintessential movie that encapsulates what that time period was about, or they'll pull out a specific scene or a specific line, like Brad Pitt's whole monologue at the end kind
Yeah.
of encapsulates the feeling at the time that the government had abandoned its people. And I think that for those reasons, this movie may never be talked about again after 100 years. But my prediction is that when Brad Pitt passes away and his filmography becomes legacy, I think people will look back on this one and say, wow, Brad Pitt was in a cool leather jacket and this film had some interesting things to say. Beyond that, I don't know, but I think that will be something that continues it longer than other people would expect it to.
Jackson sold me. I don't know. It's the best movie ever made. No, but again, I get what you're saying, though. I mean, it is true that a lot of the movies you study in film school when they came out to like negative reviews, and no one gave a crap about them until 20, 30 years later. So that's the story with Citizen Kane. It was a critical and financial failure when it came out. But then, like 20, 30 years later, everybody's like, wow, it was so ahead of its time. Not to say that Kane, but it is to say that, like, it's like what we see as good is very much a retroactive thing.
Yeah.
And it's like at the time, it's like, oh, I didn't really care about this, but 10, 20 years from now, it might become a cult classic or something like that.
Like by modern standards, most films before probably 1960 or 1970 have just terrible pacing, even some classics. I think some of the flaws in this film will be forgiven as a result of time passing.
Yeah, and just by all the big names in it, people will revisit the film from that. So, yeah, we'll see. Like Jonathan just said, I agree with Jackson, and it's a timepiece. It could be a little what's it called? What's a time capsule? Maybe we could uncover this thing in 50 years and see, just like how Doerge said, it's a remembrance of the the election year, like a kind of neo noir representation of the election year against Bush and Obama, oddly, but maybe it could be like that. Who knows? Oh yeah, McCain. Yeah.
Bush was the president currently, but it was
current president. Yeah. But do you have any other? Is that your last question, Jackson, or should we move on to film news?
I think we covered it. Yeah, I think we'll have to see. We'll have to do a once we stop this show, we'll have to do an impromptu episode of Film Week in 30 years and see how Killing Them Softly is doing.
Yeah, I'd be up for that. Let's hit the
Do
date.
people care about this film yet? We'll be in our 50s.
I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna freeze my head in cryogenic whatever. Don't bring me back until Kill Me Softly study.
Exactly. Perfect.
And with that, well, maybe NBCUniversal could help you fund that cryogenically frozen head, because they're a big conglomerate and they're buying tons of stuff right now. And one thing they did buy is Vudu from Walmart. And in the back of my mind, I did know that Walmart owned Vudu, but it wasn't when I did read this, it was a bit of a surprise to me. But they did purchase Vudu. Vudu is a streaming service that currently offers movie rentals and purchases, as well as a library of free selected content. They were owned by Walmart before, so they made just if you had a Walmart account, you could pay use purchases and purchase stuff from your Walmart account on this service. But Fandango is one of the most popular platforms used to buy movie tickets in advance, and now it owns Vudu along with its former service Fandango Now. And Fandango Now is mostly for in cooperation with theaters. But since theaters are down now due to the coronavirus, they're looking for another avenue to make money, and that's why they reportedly bought Vudu. And it's now official. Vudu has as many as 14.5 million installs on their app. So, and it's in as many and in many households in the U.S. as well. Do you think this is just surprising news to me, because before purchasing another service, I would just think they would try to make Fandango Now have a bit of online options instead of just purchasing a new one. So
Right.
have you guys ever used Vudu yourselves? Because I've never used it. I've used Crackle, a bunch of other smaller ones, but I've never personally used Vudu. Like,
I've
have you
never
guys ever used it?
I've never used Vudu usually because everything Vudu has, YouTube also has, and whenever I want to rent a
Yeah.
movie, it's like I'll just rent it on YouTube on my computer, and I can go on my TV and just open up YouTube, and I have a movie purchased. Whereas Vudu, I'd have to watch on my computer, which whatever. I guess I could get it on my PlayStation or whatever, but I don't see the point. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just a rental service that's just like any of the other ones. Like, it's always like a similar price to what YouTube charges and everything. So
Yeah, same with
Yeah.
me. I primarily use YouTube just because it's the most convenient and the quality's great. So why go anywhere else? Why do I need a whole nother service to rent movies when I can literally type, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban into YouTube and it's right there for $2.99.
Yeah, I really don't see Fandango's mindset behind this because I guess it's just to make a bit of cash in the meantime before theaters start opening up again. But this move to purchase, and we don't know how much they purchased the service for from Walmart, but a 14.5 in it's been it's been around for a long time, as many as like at least 4 years is what I would say. So that's not uh, like a big number. It's a fine number, but as long as it's been out proportionally with other services, it's not anything crazy. So I'm just a bit confused. Like, what do you think Fandango's mindset was in making this purchase? Do you think it's more for the long game, or just I think in the meantime we're going to make some money uh, before theaters open up? Like, what do you guys think on that respect?
I think it's probably that. I mean, obviously, I think with coronavirus, I think they want to have as much possible ad revenue, especially with theaters not getting all the movies now. They need something. I also think that, I mean, they could be planning on revamping it and turning it into something a little bit different than, because really it's only existed because Walmart's like, yeah, sure, we'll throw our hat into the, rental, game. That's all Voodoo was. It was just like, or you could, use your Walmart account to log in and watch rent movies or whatever. So that, I mean, so that's why Walmart had it. I feel like Fandango's probably either they wanted a known property, a known platform, because I'd never heard of Fandango now until you told me about it like 2 seconds ago.
Yeah,
So
me neither.
maybe they just wanted like a known like streaming service to have like a big attention. Like, hey, we have a thing you can rent movies on it. Maybe we'll make it a subscription service. Who knows? Like everybody's trying to throw their head into the game. But that or and this might be me being a little. I've been in my salesman mindset all week, but they might just be trying to buy up the competition a little bit. Maybe not like in a big way. I don't think that's really what their goal was because it's stupidly expensive, like basically like revenge or something. But you got to figure they're getting their hat in the game. Walmart wants to sell, make some money off of it, while also just like having a bigger share in the market now. I don't see it as a bad thing. I mean, if they're in for a penny, in for a pound, sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't see it as a bad move either. I think the interesting thing to see will be, like Doerge touched on, whether they keep it as a rental model or they move it into more of a streaming model, depending on what they end up doing with it. But, I think that it'll be interesting to see because right now the streaming model is hot, right? Like Doerge said, everybody's getting into it. But I could see very easily, because there's so many people that are being so many people that are in streaming services now, the free content is growing, right? I mean, there's YouTube, there's Twitch, there's a lot of services that offer content for free. And right now the streaming services exist because most of the time if people want to watch a movie, the movie they have is on there or a similar type of thing is already on the streaming services. But since the streaming services are getting more diversified and people are pulling their content back into their own ones, now that we have 10 major streaming services instead of 3, I could see people saying, Netflix isn't as good as it used to be. I don't have a lot of things that I want to watch on there. I will get rid of my Netflix subscription. When I really want to watch a specific movie, I will just buy it for a couple bucks. And otherwise, I will make do on YouTube, Twitch, I don't know what else, Crackle, just the free services, the things that work on ad-based revenue. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. And if that's the case, stuff like Vudu in its current form could make a big splash. I could see that happening later because people might get sick of having $12 go out of their bank account every month,
Yeah, I definitely agree. And the Fandango is the hugest, or the biggest at least, ticket pre-purchase site. A lot of people know the name, so and maybe if you attach Fandango to Vudu, it could get a lot more attention. But we'll see in the incoming weeks. And as long as coronavirus stays current, I think Vudu on Fandango's site could definitely get more popular. But moving on to
maybe Fandango now, a service I've never heard of, takes off.
Yeah. But moving to another niche subject is David Lynch. And he addresses a Netflix show rumor after his what I think was called A Talk with Jack, his short film.
What did Jack do?
Yeah, what did Jack do? And he shares a candid thought on a new Dune, the new Dune film directed by Denis Villeneuve, since he directed the first adaptation.
Very quick.
And if you've been wondering what David Lynch is faring, how he's faring in these uncertain times, you don't have to wonder too much more, because THR had an interview with him and he shared his insightful life updates. And they also asked him some questions about his Netflix short film called What Did Jack Do? Like Doerge said. And the short film got a lot of attention from just people who weren't aware that it was releasing. Film like students and just a lot of film snobs alike watched it, and it was an odd release, just like as we expected from David Lynch. But he also talked about the Denis Villeneuve, a new Dune film, and he said he has zero interest in Dune after, because he was talking about his own film that he released back in the 80s with Kyle MacLachlan, titled Doom as well. And he says, because it was a heartache for me, it was a failure, and I didn't have final cut. I've told this story many times. It's not the film I wanted to make. I like certain parts of it very much, but it was a total failure to me. And if you've seen any of his other works, like Blue Velvet or Mulholland Drive, Dune is a bit like that, and just the weirdness and the production design and the just the look of the film, but it feels very different from an average David Lynch film. And and he also said that he has really no firm look at a Netflix series right now or anything like that, but it seems like he does have a good relationship with Netflix, and Netflix does try to foster a strong relationship with those creators who are seen as legends in the film community, but who are more on the fringes, like David Lynch, who are seen as kind of like outsiders who want to stay as outsiders and want to stay more in the independent realm. Just like Scorsese, he has pretty much unlimited freedom, creativity wise, and maybe Lynch could have the same kind of creative freedom like him. So if David Lynch does sign a deal with Netflix, does it just reaffirm that Netflix is the kind of safe haven for genre content like David Lynch's? What do you think, Jackson? Do you think it could kind of be like that if they sign and try to create a series with David Lynch?
Certainly, yeah. It's so cool to be able to see that kind of content on demand, because sometimes if certain artists want their work done in a certain way, or they only present it in special formats in certain ways or something, it can feel a little closed off. But if there was a new David Lynch film on Netflix tomorrow, I would definitely be checking it out, just because I would expect that everybody would be willing to see it, because there's no risk of losing money on something you might not like. I think people's tastes get a lot more open and diversified when there's little risk to them.
Yeah.
That
And
being said,
just
I
like
haven't seen a David Lynch film before.
I think I've seen one of them. I've seen half of Blue Velvet, I think, and I just know a lot about him because he's from Montana. I think he's a very odd guy. Oh, actually, there's a short film that I've seen from him. It's starring Naomi Watts in like a bunny suit. Like it's really weird. And it's filmed from like a bird's eye perspective. And it's a very odd film. It's on YouTube. It's so weird.
I'll have to check
But
that
I
out.
have
yeah,
a friend named
yeah,
Alex. His favorite director is David Lynch. He swears by him up and down.
Oh yeah.
I've seen the Netflix short, and I've been asked right before the coronavirus hit. I'd actually asked Alex to loan me a David Lynch movie on DVD, and then lo and behold, all of this happens. So I guess I'll have to rent it.
Yeah, seriously.
yeah.
But
But
weird
yeah,
guy.
just to me, like as we've talked about before, like we're not. I don't. To me, at least, I don't think we're ever going to see a David Lynch film in theaters. Like just in the how films are today, because it's
Yeah.
either like a film that's like $10 million that costs, or it's like a $200 million film, like an Avengers film. So just his films are usually somewhere in the middle. He could probably go on the lower side, but I just don't see of him releasing a film ever in theaters again, and that's kind of disappointing. But I see Netflix as a place for him if he's going to do something like that. So that's exciting for me. But like when he talks about a final cut and fighting for that final cut in that argument over it went with his first adaptation of Dune. Do you think have we ever seen that making a better film? Like when historically, Spider-Man 3 with Sam Raimi that went under a lot of uh, final cut fights and just a lot of fights with the producing wise with Sony. I can't recall one time when we know that's made a better film, because I guess you wouldn't know about it if that did. But can you guys recall any instances like that
I think usually
when the director hasn't retained final cut?
it's probably usually a sign that the production in general is not great, because it means that maybe they're not happy with what they got. Maybe they're considering reshoots, but ultimately it probably means they're not happy with what they have, and that usually means that the film
Yeah.
itself has some flaws, and those are hard to patch up in the editing room. I really haven't been on the part of editing too many short films. Usually I'm on the production side, but no, I can't imagine, garbage in, garbage out. I can't imagine that there's a lot of films that really get saved in the editing room, save for, the very famous picks of like Star Wars and other films that are notable for that sort of thing.
The original Star Wars, you got Rogue One, switched directors, and then they had an uncredited director do
Yeah.
shoots, and was a financial smash, did well.
Yeah, we all ranked it in, I think, the top 3 or 4 in all of our Star Wars film rankings.
Yeah.
So certainly a success in our eyes.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, there's
and I could also think of like Blade Runner, the first Blade Runner too. Like it just went. There's so many like cuts of Blade Runner, like the first film at least. There's a final cut, the director's cut.
You never be sure.
There's so many.
One you've seen either. Someone says, "Oh, did you watch the director's cut?" And it's like, yeah, I bought it on DVD.
Maybe.
I have no idea.
Yeah, but I mean, I certainly think David Lynch seems like, I don't know the guy personally. He kind of strikes me as a hard guy to work with. So I can understand that he's had more than his fair share of fights with the studio on what the final film should look like.
There's a really funny video you can find on YouTube. It was when he was getting ready to make Twin Peaks: The Return, was like his first time back in like a major studio, like at least with someone giving him a lot of money.
Right.
And it's a video and audio recording of this production meeting where he's yelling at his producers. Lighting.
Really?
Yeah, he's inside pulling out. He pulls out. He starts smoking a cigarette. Like he has these like 150 cigarettes, which are like longer, these really long cigarettes. He's pulling out. He's just yelling. His producer's like, I need more time. And he talks so funny. He's like, I need more time to shoot that. He's like, they're just like, this is not how it works around here. We're like, don't tell me. Don't. I know how much. Listen, we need time to let the magic happen. We need time for the. There's no magic in it. Then what are we doing? It's hilarious. I'll find a link and I'll throw it in the chat. I think it's one of my favorite things.
He's such a character.
Yeah. Continue.
Someone else who seems to have an odd creative process is Cary Fukunaga, because he, at one point in his version of James Bond 25, as we know now as No Time to Die, he considered having the films take place like 2/3 of it in James Bond's mind.
Really?
So the production of the latest installment in the beloved 007 franchise has been consistently plagued by issues, with a seemingly endless supply of rumors connected to its plot. Arguably, its greatest challenge, however, has been the COVID-19 pandemic, which forced the spy thriller to move its release date back to November. It's a fate that's unfortunately been met by every film in production right now. But for Bond fans, news of No Time to Die's delay was yet another issue in the lengthy list of dates this year to be pushed back. It seems each time No Time to Die has found a secure footing, something goes wrong. An avalanche goes on. It gets buried. Thankfully for the director, however, the battle has opened one. The film has its release date in November, and it's the whole film's essentially done. But we talked previously about the composing issue, and they have a new composer on board after Andre Desplat has left. But he recently, in an interview, Cary Fukunaga, he recently said that he had a concept for the film that he toyed with before writing the final draft. He said, quote, "I that this movie could all be taking place inside the villain's lair from the last film. There's this scene where a needle goes into James Bond's head, which is supposed to make him forget everything, and then he miraculously escapes by a watch bomb. And then he and Leia blow up the place and go on to save the day. I was like, what if everything up until the end of Act 2 is all inside his head?" In terms of a drastically new concept in a decades-old franchise, this arguably takes the cake. I haven't seen a James Bond film ever go that high concept.
Right.
It's mostly pretty direct in how it's going to the viewer. It's user friendly to everyone watching, but this would kind of be a psych out, be a trick everyone in a way. We've seen him being drugged by his opponents in multiple situations, but this is a bit different from that. What do you guys think about this concept? Would you guys have been excited that if we got this version of the film? Are you disappointed that we didn't get this version of the film? What do you guys think? Doerge, what do you think about it?
That's super high concept. I think it's really stupid, personally. I mean, look. Let me restate that. In its own movie, that's probably interesting. In a Bond film, that would feel really weird. I feel like the promise of a Bond film is like James Bond stuff, and that's kind of really high concept, indie movie type stuff. There's one room, it's the whole. There's only one set, and it's this crazy action stuff all in his head. It's okay. I mean,
yeah, I can agree with that.
Clearly, he's just going crazy because this movie is just taking forever to get done and it keeps changing.
Yeah, what do you think, Guido? What do you think, Jackson?
Guys, we've been making this podcast. What episode are we on now? We're close to 31.
This is 29.
29, so we're close to our 30th episode.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we haven't had a more recurring topic than delays to the James Bond movie. I mean, geez, it's just been a cloud hanging over us this whole time.
For the
But
last year.
seriously, man, it feels like every other episode we're like, well, No Time to Die is in trouble again. But I mean, it's a bad idea. I think so too. I think it sounds cheesy, but there is one universe out there where they do it and it works, and it's this super cool way to do like Bond 25, where he like reflects on all the things that have happened. It's almost like a clip show, but not stupid.
It's like that one season of Archer where he's in the pool dying. And
Yeah,
it's
but
his head.
yeah. Wait, is that Vice or is that the?
I think it's the one.
I think it's Archer Vice.
I think it's Archer Vice, or I think it's the season after Archer Vice, because he's in the pool because of what happened in Vice.
Oh, okay.
And it's the one where he goes into his head, and it's like it's an old gangster. It's an old like 50s noir.
Yeah. He's like dying at the pool. Yeah, but I mean, definitely. There are 99 ways that wouldn't work, but there is one way where that would work in like a really cool way, and like there would be articles all over the place like you'll never guess what happens in the second act of the James Bond movie, and it's like it's all in his head, and it's this huge cultural twist, and he spends the rest of the movie like doing this cool Bond thing, but like it would be on paper it's a great way to tie together the whole series and to say like how do we cap off the 25th Bond movie. That would be a way to do it, and I think it would be a mistake.
Yeah, it's a really risky idea. Just like our one watcher right now, Jonathan, says, I think it's a horrible idea. I don't know if I would be that critical of it. I think it's a really risky idea, and I kind of admire it and I think this kind of shows the direction that he's going, even though he didn't go that far with his concept. Maybe he might have went even further. Who knows? But like I just wonder what this means for the film that we did get. If this was like a compromise that he went somewhere in the middle, like what hints do you think we could be getting from Bond 25 after hearing this version that we almost got? Like, do you think we could get another like kind of high concept but not that high, like toning it down a few notches? Hopefully it's like that, because I love James Bond. I kind of want to see something different, and I know Carey is he's a risk taking filmmaker, so I'm excited to see what he does with it. Just I don't know.
I'm certainly excited as well, but I have a hunch that we're going to get a cookie cutter Bond film that fan services, but largely we'll be hoping for more with the next reincarnation. That's what I'm thinking. Not nearly on the scale of like Rise of Skywalker, but I think that we will have some meh reactions overall, just because they're probably going to mellow it out and not take as many risks just because of the production issues, and they just want to get this movie out and recoup their costs.
Yeah, and that would be disappointing, but I wouldn't blame that at this point. It's been a long process, a long production process, but hopefully, at the very least, I hope it's a nice send off to Daniel Craig as Bond at the very least. But hopefully it goes down as one of the best Bond films, just beside Casino Royale, in my opinion. Hopefully it's like that, but we'll see how that goes. But to cap off this week, we have one trailer to talk about, and that's Capone, which is formerly named Fonzo. And this film's written and directed by Josh Trank. The synopsis is chronicling the final days of notorious gangster Al Capone as he succumbs to dementia and relives his past through tormenting memories. It stars Tom Hardy and Kyle MacLachlan, and right now, due to coronavirus, it's releasing on VOD May 12th, 2020. You guys saw the trailer. What do you guys think about it? I've been looking forward to this film for a while, because as everyone knows, Josh Trank's last film was Four Stick, and like it's a weird it's been a weird process for Josh Trank, but this is the next film we're getting, and I'm looking forward to it. I love Tom Hardy, and just by the what's it called, the thumbnail, the video alone, the trailer, it looks like he looks like a vampire. He has I forget what disease he has, but he looks terrible, and I know Doerge's a big fan of this film. What do you have to say?
My friend saw. I saw the trailer on something the other day, and I just kind of went nuts for it because Al Capone is like one of the craziest historical people to have ever, like in the last 100 years. The dude was a nutcase, and he was so rich he could keep it up. So he's dying from dementia, but the dementia came from he had syphilis that he refused to get treated for whatever reason, and it literally caused him to go insane. And like that, like literally, like because like syphilis is actually the end stages of syphilis. If it gets into your brain and will make you, it'll kill you. But it makes you go nuts first. And so basically, it's just this Tom Hardy playing a psychotic gangster with all the money in the world. It's gonna be fun. If nothing else, you're gonna like Tom Hardy's gonna be amazing. The trailer just gives me hyped up. I don't care about Josh Trank. I can just if I could just see like Tom Hardy playing a crazy nut out of his mind gangster, then
I was already excited, but after hearing that, I mean, what better way to sell it than that? Doerge wielding his salesman skills there. I want to see a gangster with all the money in the world being driven crazy by syphilis.
Yeah. No, there's I remember I learned most of this from the Comedy Central show Drunk History, which is just great if you like drinking and also you're a big history buff. But they have this whole episode where the one guy from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, what's his name? He's like the guy's Adam Sandberg's partner. He's in a bunch of comedy stuff. I can't remember.
Oh, geez, yeah.
That
God,
guy.
Why aren't we remembering his name?
I don't know. In this episode of Drunk History, he plays Al Capone, and it's really funny. I would highly suggest that.
What do you think, Jackson, about it? Well, I'm really into it. I've been looking forward to this film for a while. I'm excited to see a trailer finally. Like just a falling film. I was looking forward to Josh Trank's next film because, as we talked about before, some films that had issues with like the upper management. This film's notorious for that. Josh Trank apparently he had a very different vision for what Fan Four Stick turned out to be, and I'm looking forward to what we get this time when he pretty much has all control because he wrote and directed it. I'm not sure who the production company is, but hopefully they work with them and they at least compromise on certain things. So I'm looking forward to what we can get when he has his way, and hopefully it turns out pretty good with Tom Hardy and I think Kyle MacLachlan's in it, like I said. So yeah, they have a pretty good cast, and just seeing Tom Hardy go full nut would be interesting. Kind of like Venom in a way. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Josh Trank deserves better than what Fantastic Four does to his legacy.
Yeah. Hopefully this can change that, but
for sure.
That's really like I said, that's releasing May 12th of this year on VOD. So catch that. And before we leave this week, we're going to announce the FilmClub film for next week, and we also have another announcement that we only have 2 shows left for this year of Film Week. So we have one more show next week, and then our final show will be our Doerge send-off show. So be around for the little
that'll be April 5th.
April 5th. Yeah, we have it marked down.
Oh no, I'm sorry, May 5th. May 5th.
May 5th. I'm following your lead here.
Yeah, I know. Seriously, I'd set you up for that one. My bad.
Yeah, but so that's our final show in 2 weeks. So be there, be square.
Right, Sam?
Yeah, definitely. We have lots of time to prep for our final show with Doerge. But for next week, we still have a show next week, and our film club film for next week is Extraction. And like we talked about on a few shows ago, this trailer was just released, and it's going to be a new film because it's just being released this Friday on Netflix. So it's a new release starring Chris Hemsworth, action type film written by Joe Russo. I'm interested to see what he can write on his own with his production company. It's a first-time director, so that's also new. something we can look at. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this film, and hopefully everyone else can see it, and we can all have a shared experience with this new release that's releasing this year on Netflix.
So does this mean that because next, not we only have 2 more shows after this, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
So I get to pick the last film week movie, don't I?
Yes, you do.
Oh yeah.
As a send off, of course.
That's so nice. I know exactly what movie I'm picking.
Oh no, I don't know if I should be excited or not.
Oh no, you should. I've talked about it a lot, so I just want to make sure everybody's seen it.
That's great. I'm excited.
Okay. Same here. Hopefully it's on Netflix. But that's all we have for this week. I'm your host, Samuel Teyssier. Follow the Film Week Twitter to have all our updates on the show. We have Jackson Guido. Anything to say before you leave?
Wash your hands. I'll steal Doerge's line.
You son of a...
And Doerge, give us your final salesman send off.
Wash your hands. Don't touch your face as well. And remember, somebody loves you, even if it's just yourself.
There you go.
That's all we have for this week. Have a great week, guys, and we'll see you next week on Film Week. Bye, guys.
See you guys.
Bye.